I remember the Democratic leader's words of March 4th, 2020, on the steps of the United States Supreme Court, like they were yesterday. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, he said, not Justice Gorsuch, Gorsuch. I want to tell you, Gorsuch. I want to tell you, Kavanaugh. You have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. Wow. Just wow.
Kennedy opened with a truth most Americans already feel deep down. The American people aren't stupid. They see what's happening, and they see it clearly. The attacks on the Supreme Court aren't subtle anymore. They're no longer disagreements over legal theory or constitutional interpretation. They've crossed the line. What we're seeing now is intimidation, threats, open hostility toward an institution designed to stand above politics. And then Kennedy took the room back to a moment etched into the nation's memory. March 4, 2020, Senator Chuck Schumer, standing on the steps of the Supreme Court, shouting toward the justices, not debating them, not criticizing rulings, but issuing what sounded like a warning shot. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. Kennedy paused. The room went still, because everyone remembered it. That wasn't rhetoric aimed at colleagues. That was a message directed at the independence of the judiciary itself. Kennedy reminded the chamber of an old truth, one older than politics. By your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. This wasn't about relitigating a speech. This was about exposing a pattern, a years-long campaign by certain Democrats to delegitimize the Supreme Court, not because it failed the Constitution, but because they couldn't control it, and that's where Kennedy drew the line.
When the United States Senate confirmed 3 new Supreme Court justices, which the loon wing of the Democratic Party loathed, the campaign of threats ratcheted up. You remember the shouts, "Let's pack the court," they said. "Let's pack the court." And the political threats of some of the highest officials in our government fueled physical threats against the justices, and we know that. You have released the whirlwind, the Democratic leader said. Incensed protesters took to the streets, not outside Congress, not outside the court, but outside the homes of Justice Roberts, Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Thomas, and Justice Barrett. Federal law prohibits this intimidation, but the Biden Justice Department allowed it. You will pay the price, the Democratic leader said. In that spirit, angry protesters publicized the location of the school that Justice Barrett's children attend. You won't know what hit you, the Democratic leader said. A man with a gun, ammunition, knife, pepper spray, and zip ties went to a justice's home to assassinate him. Actually, his stated goal was to murder 3 justices. Not so suddenly, the ends justified the means for activists. Even inside the court itself, the Dobbs decision was not leaked by a left-wing blogger. Why? That's worth asking. You don't need to be Einstein's cousin to figure it out. They aren't getting their way. They aren't getting their way, so they want to change the rules. But the Constitution isn't a game, folks. And now some Democrats want Congress to override the Supreme Court of the United States and apply rules to its justices. The constitutional separation of powers means that no branch of the federal government can dictate how another should govern itself. That's black letter law. Now, why? This is to protect the people from abuse. The framers insulated the federal judiciary from political control to ensure that the justices would decide cases impartially, without fear of the kind of retaliation that fills the pages of some, not all, but some left of Lenin Democrats' playbook. Do my colleagues want the United States Supreme Court to tell Congress how to police itself? Even if Congress wrote a code of ethics for the Supreme Court, the court could rightly rule that code is unconstitutional. None of the laws we make here trump the United States Constitution. What's more, some Democrats want to use the lower courts as a cudgel against the highest court in the land by giving circuit judges the power to rule on whether justices should recuse themselves. Consider the conflicts of interest and the confusion that would breed. Unless you peaked in high school, you must know they will be breathtaking. Now, the absence of an ethics code written by Congress in statute doesn't mean that justices lack guidance or accountability. Justices and judges routinely consult the existing code of conduct, and federal law already requires recusal in certain circumstances like bias or financial interest. We all know that. The justices are also subject to strict financial disclosure rules, just like my colleagues here. Not only is this Democratic proposal unconstitutional, it is unnecessary. The attacks on conservative justices are targeted. They're exaggerated. The alarmism is affected. The danger isn't that rogue justices are operating without ethics. It's that Democrats aren't winning every fight and they find that reality intolerable. I've been disappointed by Supreme Court opinions too. But my Democratic colleagues should fill out a hurt feelings report and move on for the sake of the Constitution.
By the time he finished, Kennedy had done far more than give a speech. He delivered a reality check Washington didn't want, but desperately needed. His message was unmistakable. The Supreme Court is not a political weapon. It is not a pressure target, and it is not something to be bullied into submission. Kennedy laid bare the truth. Some leaders are enraged because the court refuses to bend, and instead of respecting constitutional limits, they've chosen intimidation, exaggeration, and manufactured outrage. America deserves better, the Constitution demands better, and the people expect better. His defense of judicial independence wasn't just forceful, it was essential, because once threats become normalized, the integrity of the court collapses. Kennedy stood firm, he stood unflinching, and he stood for the separation of powers that safeguards every American, regardless of party. His words were a reminder that principles matter, institutions matter, and the rule of law still matters. Whether his colleagues welcomed it or not, Kennedy refused to stay silent, and in doing so, he proved why his voice continues to cut through the noise in Washington. He left the chamber with one undeniable truth. You can attack him, you can disagree with him, but you cannot dismiss the strength of his argument. He defended the Supreme Court, he defended the Constitution, and he defended the very foundations of the Republic.